Hello everybody and welcome to my channel where my goal is to try and expand the fandom of light novels and to help new and existing fans find brand new light novel series that they can enjoy. If you love light novels or maybe you're just starting to get interested in them, make sure you hit subscribe and the little notification bell so that you can keep up with all of my future videos full of reviews and what is new and upcoming in English releases for light novels. In this video, I am going to be talking about the light novel adaptation of Makoto Shinkai's original anime short film, and that is Voices of a Distant Star. This light novel subtitled Words of Love Across the Stars. This one is adapted by Arata Kano, and it was translated by Michelle Lin and Yota Okutani. It's released officially in English by Vertical. If you'd like to pick up your own copy, I've got links to places where you can buy it in the description down below. The cover artwork for this one was done by Monogatari series artist Vofan. Now, this is not a paid endorsement or anything. I'm just doing this because I think Vofan's art is awesome. Vertical's also releasing an art book of Vofan's called Colorful Dreams. Like I said, if you've really enjoyed his artwork, particularly like with the Monogatari series that Vertical have been releasing, Vofan's been doing original artwork for the English releases as well as them including the original work that he did for the Japanese releases inside. So, you know what, I'll throw a link to that one in the description down below if you want to check it out as well. Voices of a Distant Star is the story of Mikako and Noboru, two teenagers who, well, I mean, they have fallen in love with each other. Although they keep sort of, you know, playing around, that they haven't made it very clear. They haven't come right out and said to each other, you know, I love you. It's very obvious from their behavior, and they talk at length about how they're always together and everything else. But again, it's that sort of cat and mouse game that they play. The only problem is that they are torn apart when Mikako is chosen to go and be a tracer pilot. Tracers are mecha which are being sent up into space with a Earth force because Earth has come into contact with aliens. The aliens, the Tarsians, are a very mysterious kind of creature, and we first encountered them on Mars, and apparently they wiped out that Mars expedition, but using the technology that we recovered from Mars and so forth, Earth decides to head out into space to find out more about the Tarsians, to see if there are any other planets in our system that have evidence of Tarsians being on it. And as I said, the Tracers are these mecha robots that are essentially meant to act as the defense force for the Earth forces, and Mikako has been chosen to be the pilot. As this book goes on, Mikako, it follows her as she sends emails to Noboru, and they keep in contact that way, initially over the first couple months of her training, and then as she heads out into space. As she continues on her journey, the length of time that it takes for her emails to reach Noboru increase exponentially. The first half of this book, or well, it's about the first, maybe a little bit more than half, but anyway, the first part of this book focuses on Mikako and on her experiences, and it's only over like a several months span of her training and eventually going into space and facing off against the Tarsians and the sort of mysteries that she kind of starts to figure out about these aliens, and also kind of looking at her expanding her view of just where she belongs in terms of the universe. The second part of the book follows Noboru, and it follows him as he ages and is receiving Mikako's emails at various stages in his life, and how those messages change him and change his direction as he goes along. Shinkai actually created this film all by himself. He did all of the animation, and in fact his wife and he did even the original voices when they did the film, and all of the music was produced by a friend of his. So this was a very much like in-house production. It's what eventually made Shinkai known to the world. That eventually gave us things like 5 centimeters per second, Your Name, more notably recently, and of course his most recent stuff, Weathering You. Now, there are definitely things about this book that if you try to dive too deep, you're going to pick apart. Shinkai, and I think if you are familiar with Shinkai's work, you'll agree, like Shinkai has very definite messages that he is trying to portray, and the message and the emotions of the characters are far more important, I would say, than the plausibility of the plot. And I think that's kind of the only real weakness in this book, is the plot itself. The whole idea of Mikako going into space, why the heck is like a 14, 15-year-old girl being sent on this incredible mission and everything else? Why isn't it purely military? Why? You could ask all of these questions, and there's really no definitive answers, because this book isn't about that. That is just a device to separate these characters and to change their perspective in terms of what is a relationship, and also in terms of what is your world, what is your place that you belong to. So if you try to go too deep on the plot of this one, you will probably be a bit disappointed. This is definitely not the harder sci-fi light novel that I know myself was kind of looking and hoping for, in terms of, getting some mecha type light novels. So if you're looking for more of like a real sci-fi experience, this is not it. That said, if, again, you are familiar with Shinkai's work, like I said, if you are familiar about the fact that so much effort is put into the characters and into sort of the messages and the emotions and feelings of those characters, then this book is actually very satisfying. So, like I said, set aside the plot, because, yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and you could probably poke lots of holes in it. But if you are just in it for the experience of the characters, it's really well done. And that was really what drew me into the original OVA many years ago. It was released initially back in 2002. And I believe we got it in North America 2004 or so. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. It was a number of years ago. That's what really draws you in, is the journey that these characters are taking. Mikako, I think it works really well that the book divides the two experiences, because when you're following Mikako, you're only getting from Noboru what he emails her, and seeing her experiences, and her experiences, because they're so compacted, because it's a shorter time frame. And because she's the one who's going out into space and everything else, it really works very well having these characters separated, I think. And because Mikako, you're kept engaged with seeing what's happening with her, what experiences she having, because she's the one who is having the really, truly incredible experiences. That keeps you really driven along, and her emotional journey, and the fact that, for her, because it's a compressed time frame, it's only a couple of months, so much of her emotions, so much of that love that she feels for Noboru is still very present and a very large part of who she is. In the second half, because Noboru's story is set here on Earth, you don't have that same kind of drive of the mystery of the Tarsians, or the action of the mecha battles, or any of that kind of stuff. Instead, what you find yourself pulled along with is, because you've become invested in Mikako and what she has been sending Noboru and the feelings and emotions behind it all, I found myself really drawn into his journey in terms of seeing whether his feelings for her would survive in some form, how her messages would impact him as he was in different stages of his life. Because, again, her messages start taking longer and longer to reach him. So the time span that covers in Noboru's time frame is, about I'd say it's almost a decade. So it's a very different experience, because you're following this person's life, but you're seeing how their life is impacted by this person who basically they were torn away from. kind of in a way coming back into their life every now and then, and sort of him making decisions and choices based on his feelings and his memories and everything else. And there's a lot of really cool sort of little tidbits in here about emotions and feelings and ideas. Noboru, one of the things that he talks about is how he's surprised at how quickly so many people just seem to move on from the fact that Mikako is gone. Like how people just kind of recover, you know, they're just like, well, she's not here, and they just move on with their lives. And he's so surprised by that, and I thought that was kind of like, you know, this is the thing, this is why I think Shinkai's stuff really works, is that he does some really great observations about human beings in terms of their feelings and emotions and how we behave and, you know, how we react to certain situations. This actually with Kano, who adapted this is not their first adaptation of a Shinkai work. They've done other adaptations. In fact, I'm going to be talking about 5 centimeters per second in a later video. I'm going to be reviewing that, and that's actually the same thing. It's done by Kano, and it's of a Shinkai work. The adaptation is done very, very well. It works really well as a book, honestly. I think because you can get all of that internal monologue. Sometimes, obviously, in film, a lot of stuff is left up to interpretation based on the facial expressions of a character, or, you know, things that a character does, but we don't necessarily find out their motivations behind it. I really enjoy, actually, that a book like this works so well because you're getting that inner monologue, which is really central because this book is all about the characters and their feelings and that inner sort of sense and monologue about things. Overall, you know, like it's actually a pretty short book. I think, let me just take a look. It's only like 190 pages, but I actually found it a really satisfying read. Now, I will warn you, if you're familiar with Shinkai's work, you probably know that the ending isn't going to be some nice, tidy little, like, they all lived happily ever after kind of sort of ending. But the ending is still filled with that certain sense of hope, that optimism, and of what will happen. So if you're looking for something that has a really tightly knit end that just ties up all the loose ends and is perfectly packaged and everything else, you know, it's not really like that. It's kind of more like life, you know. You just sort of get to a point in your life and it's like, well, you've laid all this groundwork, here is maybe what will happen, but there are no guarantees. So overall, I think your experience and your enjoyment of this book is going to depend very heavily on what you walk into it expecting. If you're expecting it to be a Shinkai work, you will not be disappointed. If you're expecting it to be some kind of heavy, hard sci-fi mecha action type stuff, there's a little bit of that, but I don't think it's going to quite satisfy as much as what you may be hoping for. But overall, I really liked these characters. I really liked their journey. I found that I cared about them and I was invested in what was going to happen to them and hoping that their messages and their feelings for each other would reach each other. So overall, a really enjoyable read on this one. In this video, I want to say a special thanks to Mirage, Ki Duang Ungayen, Sine, Mitchell Von Region, and Yun for their support on Patreon, as well as the support of all of my patrons who continue to help me support this channel, buying books for review, and paying for additional hosting for the Light Novel Podcast so that we can distribute it to as many platforms as possible. For my next review, I'm going to be talking about a brand new, well, it's not really brand new, it's been out for a couple of months now, but I'm going to be talking about a volume 1 of a series that actually has an anime airing right now, and that's going to be volume number 1 of The Hero is Overpowered, but Overly Cautious. That'll be my next review. I hope you'll join me for that one. In the meantime, thanks for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.